Hello, my name's Sean Walker. I want to do this video to give my testimony, especially after last Sunday when my kids gave their testimony, which had a lot to do with what God did in my life. So I felt like now was the time to talk about what He did for me, just to help you understand the amazing transformational work that God will do in a person's life out of just His pure grace. So I was saved when I was 14, which is to say I said the prayer, Lord, come into my life and I'll serve you. And didn't really understand what that meant to be a Christian at 14. Didn't have a lot of context for that. Went to church here and there. A lot of it seemed to be exciting. People seemed like they were happy at church, but I really didn't know what it meant for me to live as a Christian. And over the next several years as a teenager, just decided that maybe being a Christian was being good. And I made that association early on, that if you were a Christian, it meant you were good. And it didn't matter what was inside in your hearts or anything like that. It was just that you looked good on the outside. So I graduated from high school, joined the Air Force, and went to my first assignment in Keflavik Naval Air Station in Iceland. And I went to a little church out there, and I remember asking for prayer in this little church because I had an issue with smoking. And the next day I was out on the dock at my work center smoking a cigarette. And somebody from the church walked up on the other side of the dock and they yelled out to me, "Hey, don't tell us to pray for you if you're going to keep smoking." So that had actually I learned a couple of things from that. First of all, apparently in this faith, if somebody prays for you, that means that you're supposed to stop doing it immediately, or you would get a deliverance immediately. And that didn't happen for me. So I thought maybe there was something wrong, or this just wasn't the powerful faith that I thought it was. Second thing was, if you're gonna sin, hide it. So it occurred to me that if I was hiding my cigarette and maybe witnessing to the people on the other end of the dock, I would have been accepted to those people that were coming from the church. So that wasn't who I was, and so I decided I was gonna have to hide my sin. So I really started drinking when I was out there, smoking, lust of the heart, obviously, pornography, things like that. All that was alive and well in my life, and I just had to hide it really well. So you learn early on as a religious person to be deceptive. You have to trick people, and you have to, and that's really where the multiplicity began, that I would call it, where I learned that I had to be multiple people. That I was one person at church, I was a different person at work, I was a different person when I was by myself. So, those things cannot connect. Those personalities, you can't bring your church life into your personal life. You can't bring your work life into your church life. Whatever. You had to be those different people and keep those divided. So I left there and went to Texas, and that's where I met my wife by the grace of God. And we got married down there. She's a Christian lady, and Carol, and just really the blessing of God and favor of God on my life, that I met her down there without a doubt. Even in my mess, even in my ridiculous religious sort of attempts and the hiding of my sin and the deception and everything. I mean, there's no way that I deserved to meet her and then to be married, but thank God for that. I celebrate that. And shortly after that, we had children, and I learned that again, being religious meant following the rules. So you're a parent who's being religious, you want your kids to follow the rules. So it's a form of control, really. You don't know it at the time. You think you're raising them up in the Lord, and in some weird way, maybe I was, but it was more about control. There wasn't a lot of grace and mercy or forgiveness all the time. It was just a lot of control. And same way with my marriage. Everything in my life was about control and deception and manipulation and just all of that. And that's really what religion brings. It brings all of that. So the wickedness of my heart, I thought, well, if I keep doing the right things, I thought, if I keep following the Bible and I keep following the rules, eventually I'll get to this place where I get free from the wicked parts of me, the lust, the lying, you know, the hiding of alcohol, all that stuff. And then you get into this other thing where you think the things that I do in my private life don't have anything to do with my family, my work, all those things. You think that those things, you know, I've adequately divided my life in a way that there's no way that one touches the other. And that's a deception. Obviously, as everybody who's seen the video on Sunday of my children has learned, there was no deceiving. They knew what was going on. And I'll post that link in this video as well, so you can watch that if you haven't seen it. So, you know, over the course of time, I started to realize that I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse. The alcohol was getting worse. Pornography was getting less convicting. Things were just, they were becoming all-consuming. And so after a while, I thought, okay, I am seriously messed up. That this is something not even religion can fix. Because I had tried that for 20 years. And I was no different. I was no better. I always had this idea that this house of cards of mine was going to come tumbling down. Eventually, I was going to be found out for the fraud that I was. People were going to find out that I wasn't holy, that my heart was depraved, and that I didn't deserve my wife and children. That's ultimately what I believed. Or the great job I had, or the relationships, or anything, any good thing, I wasn't worth it. I wasn't worthy of it. And so after a while, you know, when you start to believe that, and you start to realize, you start to think to yourself, I'm just no good, and God will never accept me. Well, you take that one step further after a while, and then you get into this thing where you start to think, maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe, you know, if he's all powerful, then it stands to reason that I'm not the only jacked up person in this world. Maybe he just doesn't exist. So that's where I kind of live there. God didn't exist. And it couldn't be. It couldn't be that he exists if for a person like me to exist in this faith. Then it had to be that God didn't exist. So in 2011, I had a temporary duty assignment down to Tampa Bay, Florida. And I decided on that assignment I was going to drink as much as I possibly could and stay at a level of inebriation all day long. Not blacked out, not falling all over myself, just drunk enough that I was numb from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed on the days that I wasn't working. That was my goal. I basically decided there is no religion, there's no God, there's no point in trying to be good, to do good. There's no point to it. So I'm just going to let it go, give in. You know, it seemed to be that people that weren't living for God, they weren't having the problems I was having. They didn't seem to be tormented with these issues. And so I said, well, I'm going to go down there and I'm just going to drink all I can. I'm going to look at whatever I want to on the computer. I'm just going to throw off the shackles of religion once and for all. And I'm not going to keep playing this game, trying to live up to a God that I will never be good enough for. So really what I decided was either there was no God or I was not ever going to be good enough for him. So there was really no point continuing. And interestingly enough, I came across this passage in Psalms that sort of fits in this. In Psalm 73:10, therefore his people return to this place, and waters of abundance are drunk by them. And they say, how does God know? And is there knowledge with the Most High? Behold, these are the wicked, and always at ease they have increased in wealth. Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure, and washed my hands in innocence, for I have been stricken all day long and chastened every morning. Now, that's funny because I read that and it's like I wasn't keeping my heart pure. I was basically letting my heart go into anything, but in my mind, in my religious mind, I was being pure because I was that way on the outside. When people saw me, I was presenting an image of purity. I was presenting an image of holiness. So in my twisted way, I was thinking, I'm being pure. I'm being holy. So I went down there. I had this, experience where I was drunk, from the time I woke up in the morning. My breakfast was alcohol and just enough food to sustain me. And so I was doing that for several months. And wouldn't you know it, my body started to break down. And boy, I was really upset about that. I thought, all my life, 20-some years, I've been trying to serve a God that doesn't exist, and now I'm trying to do what I want to do, and I can't do that. I started having health issues and kept going to the hospital. They couldn't figure it out. Really discouraged. never thinking to pray or anything. I mean, I was seriously into apostasy. Apostasy means that you are following a religion and then you disavow that religion. That's apostasy. That's what I was. I was an apostate. So there was no help in God. So eventually they found out I had a bulging disc in my back, and they gave me narcotics, hospital, and just traded one drug for another, basically. And that didn't satisfy me. That didn't numb the pain. And really that's what you try to get to. Is I feel like there are several stages to this thing of this free fall. Is it starts out with you're in so much pain you're trying to numb the pain, and that's where I was. I was just trying to numb the pain until eventually the numbness is inherent to who you are. You don't need a substance anymore. You're just numb. You can't feel anything. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel love. I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel anything. I just was numb. And I was having panic attacks. Anxiety was overwhelming me, which is interesting because, you can't really define where that anxiety is coming from. It's just you have this anxiety, and that is the most that I felt, was utter terror that my body was reacting this way, and I thought I was going to die. And I had no way of understanding it because I wasn't feeling anything. So that year progressed that way. I came back from that assignment in 2012, early 2012, numb to the world, have no hope. And really, when you're in a religion, at least you have some hope. You think this God's going to do something. There's some pathway, there's some formula, there's something you have to do that eventually gets you to the place where you experience the thing that you want, whatever that is. I didn't have that any longer. So I'm here in 2012 in a place of complete desperation. I don't even say desperation. I felt nothing. I had no hope. No hope of anything changing. Really just thinking I was just sucking air every day, waiting to die. And I thought, I'm not doing any good for my kids. Couldn't relate to them any longer. Couldn't relate to my wife. That wasn't going well. My work, they wanted to put me out because I was having medical issues, and they figured it would just be better if I was put out. Everything that I had trusted in failed. Every substance, every temptation, every personal satisfaction, marriage, kids, nothing was fixing the absolute despair of my soul. And so by 2012, it was gone. I felt nothing, and didn't really have any hope of any of it changing. So about April 2012, we got a flyer in the mail for a church that was moving down to our area, and it was something that we had some knowledge of, that we were in Dayton, Ohio by now, Springboro, Ohio, south of Dayton, and it was a church that we had been in when we were stationed up that way before. So my wife wanted to go. I wasn't interested, but she came back and said it was good. We should all go. So I just gave in to that. I don't know really why, other than maybe I thought the kids would like it. So I went that Sunday. I was in the back, and I was just listening to the sermon, and I was thinking as the pastor was talking, this all sounds really good. Like, he gave a good sermon. And I thought if I believed in this stuff, that would be encouraging to me. But I didn't believe in this stuff, and I wasn't going to be taken again. And I just thought, this is kind of the end for me. I realized that being in church and listening to that sermon and not feeling anything, not even an excitement or a joy or a possibility or a hope or anything, that was it. I truly was, just a man with nothing. And I was standing there in that place, staring off into the abyss, truly, not to be dramatic. But I had no sense of anything, other than eventually we're going to leave here and we're going to go home and it'll be more of the same. And I was standing there, and God literally spoke to me, like the way that you hear my voice right now, that I heard God. And you would expect for, some sort of climactic moment in a person's life that hears God in that moment. It would be something like, Sean, I'm real, and now comes the punishment. Because really that's what it should entail. When I turned away from him like that, there's no way that he should have shown kindness to me. But what he actually said was, I'm real, and I'm not mad at you. I mean, I looked over at Carol. She was standing next to me, and I said, Carol, God's real. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, God just told me he's real. And I didn't know what to do with that. I mean, it was remarkable. It was like the story of the apostles after Jesus was crucified, and then when he appeared to them and they realized this was all real. That was the moment I had. And I raised my hands and I'm worshiping God, and I can't believe it. It's like the whole earth was new. Everything was new. Everything I had known before was fake and a lie. All the religious order and everything was a lie, and God was real. And I remember leaving that place, and I'd like to tell you that in that moment that I was completely delivered of all the problems I had, but I wasn't. Nothing had changed in that regard other than God was real. And now suddenly I was asking the question, who are you, God? I couldn't get enough of this desire just to know, who is this God that just spoke to me? Who is he really? So several months went by of just that, of just asking the question. And I remember, oh my God, I remember going to a friend's men's group. The pastor at our church had asked me to start a men's group. I went to this other men's group about that time of a friend, and, things were starting to, it was like this was happening again. Suddenly I was into this, I'm not going to say religion. I mean, God's real now, but I was kind of getting back into that lifestyle. I'll put it that way. And I remember there was a person at that men's group who, he said he was having some issues. He was losing his kids, and he was really worried about it. And I said, well, hey man, let me pray for you. And he's like, I don't need prayer. I need help. I need something more than that. I'm losing my children. And I was really struck by the honesty of that. And I asked him to come out into the hall so I could talk to him more in private. And so he walked out there, and I'm talking to him, and I said, what you really need is just somebody that you can tell your stuff to. And I didn't say stuff. And he's like, yeah, I think I do. And even in that moment, even with that conversation, that was the tipping point for me. There was something happened to me right there where I cursed in church, and that might seem like, well, okay, what's the big deal? Everybody curses. But for me, that was okay, God's real, and you are still a jacked up mess. You can't keep your mouth in church. You don't know how to be holy. There's no way you're good enough for God. And I walked out of that place, and I'm standing in the parking lot waiting for my friend who invited me to come out, and just wrecked, ruined. Just, the idea that the Lord exists and I'm still messed up. I thought, well, I can't hide from this prospect. I can't wish this away. So my friend came out, and I told him the whole story, and it's interesting. He said to me, that guy that you were talking to, when he came into church today, he told me, all I really want is to find somebody I can tell my stuff to. And he said the same word. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I believe that, God condones the way I did that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But the fact is, I was still messed up. I left there, I came home, and then I ended up driving out to a parking lot of a local grocery store late at night and sat there for 4 hours just bawling my eyes out. Just completely wrecked and ashamed. Just telling God, why did you save me? Why did you say anything to me? Why didn't you just kill me? Because you know how messed up I am. I mean, you know what's in my heart. And that's the thing, is that the hidden things of my heart were being exposed to a holy God. And that I had never endured before. I had never experienced that, because I had hidden my sin for so long that to be exposed to God, the actual God, and for him to see the ugliness of my heart. Oh man, that was rough. And for 4 hours, I just bawled my eyes out. And I had this book with me. It was called Confessions of a Good Christian Guy. And I started reading it, and it was the same story as me. Same thing. Guy got saved, tried to live a religious life, and it failed him, and he ended up getting involved in a bunch of mess, far worse, even like, things that were even beyond what I'd gotten into. And, he just kind of came to this thing that really set just helped me to transition from where I was into this next thing that God was taking me into. As he said, I realized that being a good Christian isn't about being good. It's about being forgiven and loved. And that did it. That settled it for me. I realized that all of my life, I mean, it just sort of the awareness of the last 20 years hit me that I've been trying to be good to live up to God, and God had already done it for me. He'd already covered me in the blood, but I was lifting up my sin and holding on to it out of a selfish desire to not submit or release it to Him, and He exposed that all in that moment. And I realized, you know, God He's bigger than my problem. He's bigger than my sin. He knows I'm messed up, and He rescued me anyway. And that was incredible. And I'll tell it more in other videos, but God delivered me from alcohol, delivered me from pornography, delivered me from panic attacks, delivered me from anxiety, delivered me from fear, in ways that are so profound and complete that it could only be done by God. In the midst of being delivered from all of those things, He also repaired every one of my relationships. He repaired relationships with my wife, with my children, friendships. I mean, suddenly I have direction. Opportunities. Things are opening up all around me. And that's the existence I wake up in right now is, I drive home from work. Sometimes, and I don't know if it's the Lord doing it or what, but sometimes I get this idea in my mind that I'm seeing my wife for the first time, that I'm on my way home to see her for the first time. And I have this experience of this joy and excitement and anticipation and wonder that my wife is waiting to see me. That we have this relationship where I have so much joy and happiness and companionship, and she is my best friend. She is my confidant. She is my covering. I mean, she's all of those things. God did that. He repaired that relationship in a way that I never could. I tried to control that through religion. I tried to control her, to change her through religion. Now I stand back. I'm just asking God every day, who are you? And watching Him bring my wife into this place of freedom. Freedom. And I had nothing to do with it, other than just to experience it. And here I am celebrating everything God is doing. Same way with my children. I come home, I see my children, they come to me, they share with me their hearts, their lives. I pray with them, I celebrate them, I enjoy them, I watch them, I cheer them on. Entirely different from a controlling, let me make them into what I want them to be. Now I feel like I'm just standing by, a witness to the majesty of God. That is the reason every day I wake up at least thinking about Romans 5:8. For while we were still sinners, for God demonstrates in love in this, and while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Most days it hits me, the weight of the gifts and restoration of what God has done in my life. And it causes me, I feel like all of my joints come out of alignment, and I feel I just collapse under the glory of the Lord. And I find myself weeping, just uncontrollably weeping, amazed that He would rescue me and restore every relationship. Amazed. I can't understand it, that this God who's eternal, who knows all things, created all things, is the fullness of God is in Him. He's the fullness of all things, that He's perfect, omnipresent, and yet He reached down to this worthless apostate and He rescued me. I'm amazed. I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve children who love the Lord and serve Him. I don't deserve this relationship I have with this amazing woman, Carol. I don't deserve the friends that I have in church. I don't deserve the influence that I have with people. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve anything. I don't deserve it when God speaks to me and then I can speak into someone's life, or when I just experience His joy or His kindness. Just unusual moments where God just demonstrates His kindness. And I realize the only reason that I can enjoy that is because He rescued me. I have nothing but Christ. I mean, every foundation I have ever tried has failed but Christ, the actual God. And I keep testing that foundation. I keep going deeper and deeper with God. I keep learning Him and reaching out to Him and desiring Him. I keep doing that, and it just, it's like the deeper you go with the Lord. And I know it's not this, but this seems this way to me. The deeper you go with the Lord, the more He keeps trying to outlove what you're doing. So I seek Him. I desperately cry out to Him. He pours out His love more. I seek Him in the Bible. I pray for other people. I pursue I want to know Him. He loves me more. Or He pours out love more. I mean, His love never changes, but it just seems that way. It seems like He's just pouring out this love and kindness and joy, and even the difficult times, even the hard times, it's like I know the Lord is with me. I know that He's training me and teaching me and scourging me and disciplining me and lifting me up and setting me on a foundation and walking forward with me and cheering me on and calling me forward and whispering in my ear all day, every day. That's my life. Apostate. That's the faithfulness of our Lord. That's the goodness of God. So I will serve Him all the days of my life. And there's nothing else in this world that compares to our God. Thank you for watching. God bless you. And I pray that He touches you in the same way. All right. Thank you.